Tonight, in an exclusive interview, the father of Justina Pelletier, Lou Pelletier, is back with us after an emotionally difficult court hearing yesterday. 15-year-old Justina Pelletier was taken away from her parents after they got in an argument, a fight really, with Boston Children's Hospital over her medical treatment. Justina was originally diagnosed with mitochondrial disease by doctors from Tufts Hospital, very well respected. But then she was admitted to Boston Children's Hospital for the flu, and doctors there disagreed with the Tufts diagnosis. They accused her parents of medical abuse, which basically amounted to just following the doctor's orders at Tufts. They then called in the state's Department of Children and Families, and before you know it, they were before a judge who ruled that the state should have custody of this young girl. And she's been in their custody for a year. Lou Pelletier is Justina's father. He's fighting to get his daughter back. Keith Mason is the founder and president of Personhood USA, a grassroots pro-life organization that's now lending support to the Pelletiers. Good to see you both. Lou, there were such reports out of the court hearing yesterday. We saw your wife literally being taken out on a stretcher. What was so upsetting inside that courtroom that she collapsed?
Everything we were hoping for to happen yesterday blew up. From finding out that the new medical facility, the people that were going to be in charge of her medical care, weren't going to be her Tufts doctors that the court had said was going to be her Tufts doctors. Instead, it was going to be UMass Memorial in Worcester, Massachusetts, who know nothing about her. Number two, that the constitutional lawyers we had brought in to assist us were being blocked from seeing her. Number three, which was crushing, to find out she's being moved from the facility she's in, which was in Framingham, Massachusetts, the Wayside facility, to a DCF-run facility in Merrimack, Massachusetts, called the Shared Living Collaborative, which is a purely psych facility, no medical.
Mm-hmm. Because they believe that this is that the folks at Boston Children's believe this is in Justina's head or in her parents' head, and it's been manifested on her because they disagree with the diagnoses that she received at Tufts. Our reporter on scene there, who was covering the case for us, told us that they could hear you, despite the reporters being banned from the courtroom. They could hear you almost a floor away, yelling inside the courtroom. What were you yelling about?
Between going back and forth, because my oldest daughter was obviously upset. Our whole family was enraged with what went on. Having my wife physically pass out on the floor in the hallway, that was between one and the other. I finally went into the courtroom, and the judge was still there, and I just looked at him and I said, how can you look yourself in the mirror? It was just, we just went through this on Friday where I wasn't there, my wife and my daughter were there, and by accident, her shirt lifted up.
Justina's
shirt.
And in your supervised visit, you saw that her shirt.
Yeah, my daughter. Yeah, with the 5 DCF employees and the state of Massachusetts trooper in the room.
Suddenly, that's not normal. That was an unusual event.
Normally, there's 2 DCF workers. This time, there was 5, along with the Mass state trooper. Mm-hmm. But the thing that scared the crap out of them was the shirt lifted up, and they see these severe dark red lines coming out from where her port was from her cecostomy tube. And that's either a sign of poisoning, sepsis getting to the system, or some other critical thing. If they hadn't seen it and raised a red flag, she could be dead today, because that's poisoning going into her system because it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm. Needless to say, you're not satisfied with the care that Justine is getting outside of your custody. Let me ask you, Keith, what are you doing in this case? Because, everybody followed the Terry Schiavo case. Mm-hmm. It was an issue about the value of a single person's life and how we define that. So why would you step in on a case like this?
Well, we were moved and touched, and our hearts broke at the fact that the dignity of Justina is being violated, and she's not being cared for properly, it seems. And on another front, I moved as a father, just sympathizing with Lou and saying, if this was my daughter, I would want someone to speak up and speak out on her behalf. And so we became involved to mobilize the nation, mobilize people that hear this story and want to have a voice.
Is that happening?
Justina. It's beginning to happen now. We're starting to do phone calls. We're asking people to call the judge, the DCF. We'll be having a vigil this Saturday outside of the facility where Justina is being held. Mm-hmm. Approaching lawmakers, things of this nature, to raise awareness, to build pressure upon the state of Massachusetts for this injustice.
What's amazing is, and this is on the court records, The only abuse you've been accused of is doing what the Tufts doctors wanted you to do, and as you pointed out to me the other night, what the insurance companies paid for. Why would they pay for these procedures that were totally unnecessary? The doctor said do it, you did it, the insurance paid for it, and then another hospital said that's abuse. Based on that case, you lose custody of your child for a year, and now the year is over and you're not getting her back. Now she's going to yet another facility and yet another facility, and the question is, how long can they keep her away from you? Has anybody answered that question for you, Lou?
No. Just like they've ignored the fact that her sister, who's 25 years old, was medically diagnosed, because the problem with mitochondrial disease is it's still in its infancy as far as testing. They can treat it, but diagnosing it, whether it's with medical biopsies where they take a gouge out of your thigh or with DNA testing, it's still in its infancy. With Jessica, my daughter, it came back positive, which also means chances are there's a genetic marker for it, which is a high probability that one of her sisters could have it. So, and whether you test positive or not, you're looking at treating the symptoms. And if the treatment is working, if it quacks like a duck, guess what? It is a duck. If it sounds like it's mitochondrial and you're treating it and it's working, it is mitochondrial disease.
That's what the Tufts doctor has been saying, which is, he says he's an expert in this, and he confirms that's what it is. We're going to have much more with Lou and with Keith right after this break. Don't go away. We're going to talk about the gag order, among other things. We're back now with Lou Pelletier and Keith Mason. Keith, let me ask you, as somebody who fought in the Terry Schiavo case, and that was a question about whether this woman who was potentially, brain dead, that was the argument, whether she should be kept on feeding tubes or not, and ultimately the decision was not. The folks in that case said this is about government intrusion on a family's decision. The parents had made one decision, the husband had made another. Do you believe that this is also a case of government intrusion?
Absolutely, and I think it's diminishing the dignity of the human person. I think ultimately, I think that all humans have value and should have dignity, and I think that's what we're seeing is the state of Massachusetts stepping in, and with the medical care being diminished, and it seems like she's just under such poor care with the government.
How do you decide, though? Because Lou's detractors say, no, she had to be taken away from the parents because they were basically imagining an illness and having surgeries performed based on that.
I think the facts are pretty clear, and I think just looking at the images that we're seeing behind us, I mean, you look at her under the care of her family, and then you look at her under the care of the government, and it seems to be that the government's treating her as though she's a piece of property rather than a person, and I think that's what's mobilizing us. That's what's moving us to step in and say we need to stop this.
Somebody needs to stop it. Lou, what's the question of the gag order? Has this been discussed? Do you believe that's why there was a police officer present at the visitation on Friday, which I know you did not attend?
It's possible, but the gag order, just like ultimate permanency custody with Justina, was pushed off until either March 17th or 24th, another month where they just kicked the can down the road, which a child's life is on the line and they don't care. Let's kick the can down the road so we can buy themselves some more time.
Well, listen, we're glad you're speaking out because it's a story in which our viewers have a lot of interest now. We thank you both for being here.
Yeah, people can just, like I said, prayers are the #1 thing we can ask for.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
We'll continue to follow.